Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue watching 90 Day Fiancé. I'm going to react to it. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Let's see if anything of interest comes out of my face as I watch the show.
Tamara is the next door neighbor.
Ooh.
She lives down at the bottom of the hill. She's a very helpful neighbor, and she's good friends with Beau.
Hey!
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
So Beau and I are the same age. We're both 50 years old. And interesting. So the other thing that I want to say is that a lot of people have been commenting below about the allegations or the charges, convictions maybe, about Beau and his past. From my memory, there were, I believe, violent charges, maybe drug charges, I'm not quite sure. And some people were concerned that other people on the internet were concerned for him, and they were saying, no, he is a terrible person. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. He certainly seems to have committed some crimes that might be terrible. But we don't want to just say, just because of those incidents, that the human being is irrelevant or throwawayable or inherently violent or something. A lot of people go through some tough times in life, and we just want to reserve judgment. Are there people who should be labeled as a problem in your life, or as someone that we want to stay away from, as someone that we would want to recommend to someone like Natalie to steer clear of? Absolutely. But I don't know if any of us know enough about Beau to know about his current life and how safe he is and how well he's living his life. I don't know. Comment below if you want to, if you have details. I tend to try to avoid internet discussions because as I watch the show, I want to be as fresh as possible. And when I read articles, sometimes they spoil things. But anyway, let's get back to this.
But I realize that my visa ending very soon. And I'm really expecting to get a ring by now, but I don't have it. On the top of what's going on with Mike right now, we have coronavirus.
So, as I will sometimes want to point out as I watch these shots of Squim and the surrounding Seattle area, I grew up with backyards of homes being similar to this. The place where I grew up no longer looks like this. It's lots of homes and lots of people. But when I was growing up, there were lots of days playing in the 70s, playing like cops and robbers or war or whatever G.I. Joe we were playing. We would play in the back yards of people, and it would look like this. We would have our bikes and our adventures, and we'd be miles away from anyone, let alone our parents. So I'm guessing that this terrain isn't that unusual, but when I see this scene, it feels very much of home. There's even places just outside of Seattle that will look like this. It's one of the nice things about this town is that there is a pretty lush nature that's still preserved close to the city, even though the urban area is pretty densely populated compared to the rest of the area. You can still find places like this that are, at least somewhat desolate.
Michael, but you know what? The problem is my visa expires in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
With coronavirus, I don't know how we can get married now.
Okay, she says we have 3 weeks left. I don't know how we're going to get married in that time with the pandemic. And it makes sense that she's wanting to know, where do we stand and what are we going to do together as a couple? What do you want to do with us? And I would wish that she would scale it back and say something like, so where are we? Are we in a relationship? Are we moving towards getting married? Are we boyfriend, girlfriend? What are we? Because I think that's a more fundamental question. By bringing up marriage to Mike, I'm guessing it's going to be hard for him to respond to that. I think it'd be hard for him to respond even to a simpler question, because I think he comes across as someone, I don't know, total speculation, as someone who's really terrified of vulnerability and terrified of revealing what he thinks or coming across as if he has needs. So let's see how this conversation goes.
With coronavirus, I don't know how we can get married now. If the whole court's gonna be closed,
But I mean, it's out of our control.
I don't want to be illegal,
It's
honestly.
out of
I
our
don't.
control. I know there's a lot on your mind and stuff right now, but we need to keep making progress.
Okay, so we're right back to where we started. Because she's asking about marriage, he is addressing the marriage question, but I wish they would have a more fundamental conversation about, are we even in a relationship? When I go back, if I don't get married, because it doesn't look like that's going to happen in 3 weeks, where do we stand? What's our long-term outlook here? What do we, but anyway, she talks about marriage, and then he says, we still have a lot to work on. And I'm beginning to, one of the questions that you can often ask yourself when you are in a frustrating situation or you're observing one is try to imagine that the person understands what we understand. What we understand watching, or at least what I understand, what I think I understand watching, and I'd have to ask them to know this. I can't really tell from watching a television show, but it seems to me that the two of them are avoiding talking about more fundamental things. Do you love me? Do I love you? Do you like me? Can I trust you? Can I say things to you that I don't like that you do? Can I ask you to do this? Can you trust me that I don't hate you when I make a request? More fundamental things about trust and love and vulnerability. Instead of doing that, he avoids completely. She talks about marriage and the ring as a indication or a litmus test of love, instead of talking more fundamentally about it. And he will say, we need to work, we have a lot to work on. Hey, I want a ring. Hey, let's get married. We have a lot to work on. Without talking about, what does that mean? Does that mean we're like 3 weeks away from marriage, or are we talking like never? I mean, that's the range that Mike seems to be exhibiting. We just don't know. It looks like we're edging towards the never end of the spectrum, but who knows? And so as we're watching this, we're like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Well, we could probably assume that the two of them basically understand that they're in a loop of behavior. And from the outside, it looks like they don't understand that. But it's quite possible that they do understand that on some level, but they don't know how to get out of it. And that's one of the things that I've seen in a lot of couples is they will sit down on my couch and they will talk about these conflicts that they get into. And Mike and Natalie are relatively in the beginning of their relationship. People that are in a relationship for 20 years become very familiar with their conflicts. They almost always look the same. And there might even be like one or two or maybe three conflicts that they just get into exactly the same way every single time. So people become very aware of that process. They just don't know how to get out of it. They don't know how to regulate in the moment. They don't know how to interpret what's happening in the other person. Their past traumas are getting triggered in the moment. The other question to ask is, why would someone do that to themselves? Why do we do that to ourselves? Well, there's a lot of different possibilities, but in terms of Mike and Natalie, I think that there's a possibility that this is not the first time this has happened to them, that they have had multiple relationships prior to this where there have been dynamics at least somewhat similar, if not exactly like this dynamic. I don't know, but that's usually the case. And so we would have to ask, why would someone continue to go back to that well and find it dry? Why would someone continue to operate from a similar place and end up in a place that they don't like to be? Well, usually it's because they're doing the best that they can with their defenses. We all have defenses. When you feel scared or hurt or something, we all have ways of protecting ourselves. And so I think that the way that they protect themselves actually will provoke the behavior in the other person that they don't like, and then they have more reason to protect themselves. Anyway, but let's see if they can get actually to some fundamental conversations, maybe even just a conversation about the reality of like, well, if we don't get married, then what? And I wish they would go back to Dave. I think his name is Dave. I think I was debating, is it Doug or Dave last time? And people commented below and said that it's Dave. The therapist, the couples therapist they went to earlier, they have 3 weeks. They could do 3, maybe even 6 sessions in that time. Let's see if they do that.
Otherwise, there's no wedding, There's a lot to weigh on, okay? Natalie's worried about a vast amount of things, She's been trying to talk to me about the wedding and everything, and I've been trying to tell her, like, I'm not going to do anything that I'm not ready for. And all the going along right now, I mean, I don't know how every day could go, you know?
I'm beginning to think that Mike might absolutely need a couples therapist to help him communicate. He seems to be saying the same vague things over and over and over again. It makes me wonder if he even knows what he wants. I don't know.
Some rough stretches here, so let's keep moving forward, okay?
But we're progressing in our relationship.
We're getting there. We're heading in some right directions, yes.
Okay, so a little bit of an indication in that style of talk about like where are we and where are we headed. He's saying, oh, actually, yeah, there's been some good things. We're heading in the right direction. Now, if I were Natalie, I'd be like, so if everything goes really well, are we saying marriage in 2 weeks or are we saying marriage in 2 years? And he'd say, well, you know, I'm sure he would say, well, I don't, and then what I think what Natalie needs to do is say something like, Mike, honey, I'm not putting any pressure. I'm really just curious as to what is inside your mind, what's inside your heart, because it would really be great if I knew that. I think Mike might know from previous experience, I don't know if that's happening right now, that if he says the wrong thing to Natalie, that she will get really upset and triggered. And he's trying to avoid that by saying what is perhaps really on his mind. And so I think Natalie would have to help him to feel comfortable by saying, I'm sorry for jumping down your throat for things you said earlier. I really am just curious where you stand right now because I have my thoughts and I want to know your thoughts. Let's see if she can do that.
She's not ready to plan wedding at all. Along with COVID, I don't know what to do.
You ready?
Yeah. So, wait. Do I have any other options? No, I don't.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people watching the television show would say you have an option of breaking up with him. So, do you have other options? Yeah, you have other options. But if she's saying, I'm in love with him and I want to be with him for the rest of my life, then there's no good option given what's happening. You can really try to wrestle him back to couples therapy, and you can even do that after you go back home. You can do it online with people. I think that the laws, I don't know, the laws, I don't have any, none of my clients are outside the Seattle area, so I haven't had to deal with this, but I know some people have had to look into laws and stuff about clients that might be in other states or other countries, so I don't know about that. Anyway, point is that I think there's an option for that. Anyway, let's continue watching.
No, because of coronavirus, Washington is shutting down all businesses. And today is the last day. The dress shop is open. Michael doesn't know that I'm here, but it's my last chance to get a dress. So I decided to take a look.
So wait, she has a couple weeks left. They have been explicit, Mike has, that he doesn't want to get engaged, which means he doesn't want to get married. And she's thinking, well, this is my last chance to get a dress. Does this indicate that she believes that she can actually get married in the last couple of weeks? Given what we've seen, that doesn't seem like a wise prediction. Or does she know reality? I don't know reality. She knows reality better than I do. But let's say that it's reasonable to assume that they're probably not going to get married, and she understands that. And why, if that's what's happening, then why would she be getting a dress? Would that be a way of trying to be cute with Mike so that it'll help Mike to loosen up? Maybe she thinks that would happen. Is she living a fantasy? I don't know. I wonder about the wisdom of her going wedding dress shopping given the status of their relationship. If you haven't become a patron of the podcast yet, that would really make us happy if you did that. You can go to patreon.com. There should be a link below. Become a patron of the podcast. That's how we know you like what we're doing. And of course, as always, everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.